So, what the frack happened to the Battlestar Galactica spin-off series Galactica 1980? Let's find out. Movies,
Music and monsters.
Hey guys, Dan Monroe here, talking about movies, music, and monsters. About 2 weeks ago, I did a video all about the 1998 Lost in Space film, which, to a lot of people, didn't really age all that well. However, I decided to take a positive spin on that film, talking about all the things from that movie that really weren't all that bad. Well, that mindset certainly has to apply to Galactica 1980. And believe it or not, despite the fact that this series is generally remembered as being pretty terrible, let's just put our blasters back in our holsters and talk about some of the good things from Galactica 1980. So grab your flying motorcycle and let's dive in. It's no secret that the original Battlestar Galactica is one of my all-time favorite shows. A couple of months ago, I did a deep dive into this entire series. Check it out. Link in the description. Even though the Battlestar Galactica theatrical film was pretty well received by both audiences and critics, the same can unfortunately not be said for the short-lived TV series. Sadly, after only one season, Battlestar Galactica was canceled and it looked like the franchise was pretty much over. However, the fans of the original Galactica show were so distraught and upset with the cancellation of the series that a massive write-in campaign began almost immediately to bring Battlestar Galactica back to network television. Never let it be said that any good idea truly dies as long as some corporate entity can make a lot of money off it. So basically, the ABC network, after a lot of deliberation, reached out once again to Battlestar Galactica creator Glenn A. Larson to see if, one, he had any ideas, and two, if it could be done really, really cheaply. Basically, the show had no budget right from the beginning. And because of that, they just couldn't afford to bring back the majority of the cast from the original Galactica. So, at first, they decided to set the series 5 years after the original Galactica, giving them an excuse to be able to not include a majority of the previous cast, and save a ton of money at the same time. The original concept of Galactica 1980 included Commander Adama, Boomer, who had somehow moved up the ranks to Colonel, Apollo, Starbuck, and Lord Baltar. Apparently, in this early version of the story, Baltar somehow made atonement for betraying the colonists to the Cylons and was now president of the Council of 12. How cool would that have been? But never happened. They did, however, reach out to Richard Hatch and even sent him a script, but after reading it, Richard pretty much thought that the show just wasn't really going in the direction that he felt was best suited for the story, and he was probably right. Dirk Benedict, who played Starbuck in the original series, was also unavailable at the time, so he was out. Another cost-cutting measure was to place the series on current-day Earth, allowing for the production team to literally film around town rather than to film on alien worlds and extremely expensive Hollywood sets. So, it was at this point that a crucial decision was made to set the pilot of the show even further in the future, like 30 years after the original series. Boxy, Apollo's son, would for some reason be renamed Troy and take the Apollo role, and a character named Lieutenant Dillon would take over the Starbuck part. Apparently, the show did attempt to explain why we were missing a lot of the characters that we loved from the original Battlestar Galactica. Apollo is dead. Jeez, you'd think they could come up with something a little more respectful. And Starbuck was marooned on some distant world, which is actually really awesome. but we'll get back to that in just a second. So, we never did actually find out anything about what happened to Cassiopeia, Sheba, or even everybody's favorite robot dog, Muffet. The really cool concept of President Lord Baltar was written out completely, and Commander Xavier, or Dr. Xavier, was created to take his place as the villain. This is really kind of interesting. The original concept of the show was to focus on Commander Xavier traveling through time to disrupt Earth's history. And when that storyline was eventually dropped, Donald Bellisario, who was a producer on the show, took that concept in 1989 and created Quantum Leap. How cool is that? Well, after the pilot was completed, the network was, of course, unhappy with all this time travel stuff, which was supposed to be an ongoing storyline throughout the course of the entire Galactica 1980 series. They were so annoyed about this storyline, in fact, that ABC agreed to pick up this pilot as a series only if creator Glenn A. Larson agreed to drop all the time travel stuff. So that's what they did, for better or for worse. So we basically ended up getting a very short-lived series about the Galactica finally arriving on Earth, only to find that the technology in 1980 was not enough to defend Earth from the Cylons. All right, let's stay positive. It was great to see Lorne Greene back as Commander Adama. I thought the beard was really pretty cool and kind of a nice addition to his character, even though it was more than obvious that it was just stuck on his face 5 minutes before filming. Flying motorcycles? Yep, that's in the budget. A decent beard? Get out of here. You know, Commander Adama, to me as a kid, always came across as a super strong and intelligent leader in the original show. But it seemed like this time around, he was more or less reduced to just kind of a gentle old man who took most of his guidance from that Dr. Z kid. Not sure why they made that change, but whatever. It was awesome to see Herb Jefferson back as Boomer. He was always one of my favorite characters in the original series, and I'm not really sure why. Maybe because, to me, he was sort of the glue that always held Apollo and Starbuck together. Awesome character. Great to see him again. Now, the two lead guys, Troy and Dylan, were okay, obviously meant to mirror Apollo and Starbuck, almost a little too obviously. One with dark hair, one with light hair, one's the straight man, one's sort of the space cowboy. But it is what it is. Or it was what it was. Kent McCord played Captain Troy, who was previously known to audiences from his role on Adam 12. Barry Van Dyke played Lieutenant Dylan, and he was the son of comedic legend Dick Van Dyke, and this was his first starring role in Hollywood. Pretty cool. This is super interesting. For one of the sequences showing the Cylons attacking Earth, the producers actually took footage from the 1974 movie Earthquake and superimposed Cylon fighters over the top. Very creative way to save money. Irwin Allen would have been pleased. The flying motorcycles were interesting. They were actually modified 1979 Yamaha MX-175 motorcycles. And to my knowledge, there is at least one of those motorcycles still floating around, but hang on, we'll get to that. It was really so cool to see the Galactica again, and as a kid, I always loved seeing Cylons and the Cylon ships. But it was literally the last episode of the series, The Return of Starbuck, that somehow, to me, made the whole series worth it. Yeah, Starbuck was back even for one puny little episode, but man, was it awesome to see. And still is. The producers understood that the show was rapidly taking a nosedive, and in a last-ditch effort to try to save the franchise, they somehow convinced Dirk Benedict to return to his role as Starbuck for the last entry in this series. The show itself was freaking awesome. Starbuck crash lands on an alien world with a Cylon that he rebuilds and befriends. There's this mysterious woman with a child that somehow ends up being Dr. Z Starbuck's kid or something. But the relationship between Starbuck and that Cylon was just so awesome to watch. And I really hate to admit it, but this is actually the only episode of Galactica 1980 that I watch. I mean, to me, this episode is kind of part of the original Galactica show. I don't know, just how I look at it. Nevertheless, the ratings for that final episode were off the chart, and the fans of the original series were finally given what they hoped they would have gotten from the beginning. A glimpse of one of our favorite characters back in action one more time. Sure wish Disney would have thought about doing that too, but whatever. Okay, but what happened to all those super cool props from the show? Well, the Hero Cylon Raider filming miniature from Galactica 1980 sold in 2023 for a whopping $57,000. Captain Troy's Colonial Warrior blaster pistol also sold in the same auction for just under $1,000. That was a pretty reasonable price. I should have bid on that one. That same year, Captain Troy's Colonial Warrior uniform sold for about $1,300, and it looks like at one point, one of the original flying turbocycles from Galactica 1980 was up for auction with an estimated range of $25,000 to $35,000, but I don't know whether or not it sold or where it ended up. Not a clue. If you know, let me know. But it is cool to know it still exists. Galactica 1980 was released on ABC from January 27th, 1980, only until May 4th, 1980, after which it was pretty quickly canceled. The show was pretty poorly received by not only critics, but also the fans of the original series. I mean, back then, I just don't think anybody really cared for it. And the time slot also didn't help. They put it on Sunday nights at 7 o'clock, which is generally reserved for like educational and news programs. Well, like it or hate it, Galactica 1980 came and Galactica 1980 went, but that wasn't quite the end of Battlestar Galactica. The 10 episodes of Galactica 1980 rolled into network syndication, and a feature film called Conquest of Earth was sort of stitched together from existing episodes, kind of the way they did with the Planet of the Apes TV show. They even managed to throw Baltar into this film, which was basically just footage from the original Galactica series. Really strange. In December of 2007, Universal released all the Galactica 1980 episodes in a 2-disc DVD set, get this, advertised as the original Battlestar Galactica final season. Yeah, that's kind of a stretch. Talk about clever marketing. And in 2009, Dynamite Entertainment released a Galactica 1980 comic series, which I've heard was really not too bad. However, in the early 2000s, Battlestar Galactica would once again see an enormous resurgence with the release of a brand new, reimagined series with a big-time budget, familiar themes, characters, and Cylons, but that, my friends, is the topic of another video. I really hope you guys enjoyed that retrospective on Galactica 1980, and if you did and you like this kind of stuff, please consider subscribing. I've got a whole bunch of new videos coming out really soon that I know you guys are just gonna dig. As always, if anybody has any questions, drop them down in the comments and I will try my best to answer them for you. And please feel free to stop back anytime as we continue our conversation on movies, music, and monsters.
Movies, music, and monsters.